I made vegan spaghetti squash with a creamy Alfredo sauce. Let me show you how. First, I cut the spaghetti squash down the middle. And yes, this was like challenging a little bit. But once you cut it down the middle, it'll look something similar to this. And then I took an ice cream scooper and just cleaned out the seeds. It should look something like this after all of the seeds are removed. Next, I added some olive oil and I pretty much just slowly brushed it all around the spaghetti squash, just making sure that it was well oiled before I added my seasonings and popped it into the oven. So some of the seasonings that I used are a combination of garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, red pepper flakes. You can pretty much get creative if you decide to make this recipe, but those are some of the seasonings that I used, and I'll share a little bit more about the entire recipe in the caption below. But yeah, so after you season it up, then I placed the spaghetti squash in the oven in my cast iron pot on 375 degrees for 1 hour. After that, I started prepping my veggies by washing and drying my veggies. After they were washed and dried, I started cutting up everything. I decided to use red pepper, tomato, onion, and some fresh garlic. If you decide to make this recipe, feel free to use whatever your heart desires, baby. It's Alfredo. I was gonna say you can't mess up Alfredo, but you can. So just, stick to the basics if you really don't know what you're doing, or you just kind of want to stick to a recipe. Just, listen to the ancestors or just do your thing. Next, I decided to use some veggie crumbles, and this is the brand that I decided to use. I really like the ingredients, and I really liked how it sauteed down. After the spaghetti squash is taken out of the oven, I had my husband go ahead and start shredding up the spaghetti squash. It should look something similar to this, literally like spaghetti noodles. This is the butter I use to saute my veggies in. Oh my God, that butter is so good. I started off sauteing the red pepper, then I added the onion and just sauteed that a little bit before adding the garlic in. After you add the garlic, you just kind of want to saute it for an additional 60 seconds and then add the spinach. I went ahead and added maybe like a pound of spinach. After the spinach cooked down, I ended up adding some Boursin dairy-free cheese. Baby, this cheese is so good. You can eat this on some toast, some bread. Honey, I decided to use it as a base for the creamy Alfredo, as well as adding some dairy-free heavy whip. Now keep in mind, this is me veganizing the recipe. This recipe started with like a whole meat and all types of stuff. But yeah, after you start in the heavy whip, then just slowly add in your mozzarella, just folding it in. Look how creamy that sauce is. Oh honey, yes. Now I'm adding in the tomato and then the veggie crumbles, and I'm just slowly folding everything in, not stirring, but just lightly folding everything in. And now it's time to add all of that creamy goodness to the spaghetti squash. Yes, ma'am. Look at that sauce on that spaghetti squash. If you are ever in need of just wanting to cut some carbs and replace with veggies, using the spaghetti squash is such a great alternative. Like, it's just so good. So after you stir everything up, look at the finished product. Oh my God, this was so delicious and creamy. You have to make this.